Dude, you are getting well. Dude.
Yay. That was great.
Thank you. You're getting well.
Love that.
I am so excited to have a very special guest on. Her name is CANDANCE Danforth. CANDANCE is a personal freedom coach, a soul sister, an amazing human, one of my favorite people on the planet, and someone who I am inspired by on the regular, and also who has a really powerful story to share. And she's a powerful woman, and I think we need to hear from more women in the world today. So without further ado, hi, CANDANCE.
Dude, that's fantastic. Thank you. What a welcome. I actually feel the same way about you. So there we have it.
Thank you.
For having me on. It's been quite a past, I guess, 5 to 6 months in my life. So I am a personal freedom coach. So basically, what that title is, because a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah, tell us. I have that same one, and people are like, "What the F is that?"
I know. I end up like, I'm like,
which is a great opener, by the way. You're like, well, since you asked.
It is. But basically, it's, you're finding your own personal freedom within. I'm helping people create a better relationship with themselves, because most people come to me and it's all external. It's like, I'm not doing well in my job. I'm not doing well in my relationship. And what it all comes back down to is really cultivating a relationship with you. And if you don't know what you like, if you don't know your standards or your values or any of those things that actually help you thrive, then you have no inner guidance system. And so you're basically kind of walking around with like blinders on and a veil over your face. And when you start to know yourself better, then these external things start to become more whole, or you get rid of things externally that you didn't think that you didn't need anymore, essentially. So that's kind of what a personal freedom coach is.
Is that where the freedom part comes in?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. You have your inner freedom and you feel free, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not so bound by attachment to things. And like your ego isn't running the show anymore. It's like you have control over your emotions in a way that you never did before. That external thing doesn't have you. It doesn't have the control anymore. You're like, wow, I used to get mad at that. Right? So that's kind of how I like to explain it.
That's amazing. I love that. Is that when you were a little girl and you're like, when I grew up, was it like, I want to be a personal freedom coach?
No. No, I think.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh my gosh.
When you were a little girl.
When I was a little girl, I had I wanted to be a doctor. I was actually highly fascinated by, I used to read my parents' like medical journal, and I would bring friends over and I'm like, look at this. It's like a black hairy tongue. And like, because there's like pictures and weird pictures of all these different ailments. My parents thought hands down, she's going to be a doctor.
Are your parents doctors?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was just the fascination.
They just carried they just subscribed to the medical journal.
It was this giant book, and they only had one. It was like, how we had the encyclopedia.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's like, yeah.
It was like that,
Mom, what's the capital of Zaire?
Right?
Look it up, dear.
They had like
encyclopedia.
Like,
here's the knowledge of the world.
Yes.
For everything you ever know.
And that's what we had. So it was like, that's how I learned certain things. And I was fascinated, but I think I'm just I was always fascinated by human behavior, always wanting to go in depth, wanting to talk about things to a level that some people would be like, why are we talking about this? Let's go play a game. And I'm like, fine. Fine. So I think it just naturally was one of those things that finally I fell into my purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of finding your purpose, I mean, that's definitely a buzzword today. Everyone's like, I feel like maybe the pandemic has been a time when people were suddenly spending a lot of time by themselves and they're like, oh, wait a second. I'm working really, like, I don't like this job. I don't have to work this hard. Like, what is my purpose? Or they've been working that hard and suddenly things change and they're, now what? Right. So, was there ever a time when you really struggled with finding your purpose? And
my
if so, what did that look like?
my whole life. I
Your
felt
whole
like
life?
that up until about 5 years ago. I felt like I was, you know, you I always had people in my vortex that they just, you know, those people that just they started off young, you just knew what they were going to do, and they just kept striving for it, and now they're, you know, I had a lot of people like that. And it I used to think there was something wrong with me because I was this person that tried everything. The amount of different jobs that I've had, I've opened up restaurants, I've worked in advertising, I was a videographer. Like I have
Hmm.
so many odd jobs, but at the end of the day, when I look back on all of those jobs, it helped cultivate my ability to resonate and understand so many different types of people, that being in all of those different environments and being so observant of people is why I have the knowledge base that I do now, and how I can connect with a lot of different personality types. So when I thought that this was like what's going on with my life, there's always a purpose to why. If, you know, instead of going through the struggle of like this sucks, like I just don't understand, if we can start to remember that there is like alignment and purpose to everything, that when I look back and go, oh my gosh, this did go the way that it was supposed to go, because
Hmm.
here now, and having all of that under my belt was so needed to be where I'm at now. So neat.
Hmm. Was there any specific time in your life when something happened and it was like not the way you had planned for things to go? And if anything, it felt like the complete opposite. And like totally, like, really, universe? What the? Is there any time you've experienced that? And can you tell us a little bit about what that was like, and like how you came to find the like higher good in that? Like that you said in hindsight, oh, like this, I was meant to go through this. Like this actually helps serve what I've been through, allows me to show up for this now. Has there been any times in your life when you've really dealt with a huge obstacle or hurdle that was unforeseen, and how did you deal with it?
I think I've had many of those. But I would actually just say the most recent one, right? Like of my cancer diagnosis. I that because I when you said that, I went through, because there's seasons of our lives, right? And we're always in different seasons, and we think of that not like a winter or a summer or fall or anything like
Mm.
that. We have different seasons that we move through. And so when you said that, I went back into my life, just like cat going like, and every single season I had something that happened that derailed me, or that I was like, what? Like either was it losing a job or something like that. I did a lot of my, I made a lot of decisions around the men in my life, that
Mm.
those decisions that I've made, it got to a point where it was like I felt like God was throwing me that lesson so many times, that like you need to. So being single this past 2 years was probably the best thing for me, because I needed to again cultivate a relationship with myself. And I was always, the second I would lose a relationship, I found myself in another one very quickly. And like, you need to make me happy, right?
Mm.
And going through this diagnosis, I wasn't alone. I shouldn't say I was alone. I had so many people in my corner and here for me and traveling to see me, but without a partner. um, I've learned a lot from, finding out you have cancer is something that, ooh, it rocks you in a way that, you kind of, you think about your death. You just can't help but do that. You think about
Mm.
dying, and you don't know exactly what you're hearing when you first hear, like, I'm so sorry to tell you, but you have cancer. And you're just like, what? Wait, what? and like your life, everything that you thought you had planned, right? You like we like to try to plan because we are control freaks as human beings, right? It makes us feel safe on the inside.
Yeah.
But it was something that was out of my control, and yet it helped me grow beyond belief because I had to force myself into the unknown like I'd never had before. And that was a big wake up call for me. Like I had to deal with the fact that I didn't know what next year was going to look like, right? Even though I was getting certain, like even when I found out I was cancer free, I'm still going through the surgeries and the things, and I don't know. And it put me into a state of flow that was incredible, actually. Incredible. I don't know if that answered your question. I felt like I was kind of all over the place, but it really had to do with the cancer. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I got it. That was really powerful. That did answer my question, and that sounds like a time in your life when it's been really challenging, and that was recently, right? It's not long ago.
It actually blows my mind that it was over the course of the last 5 months, and I'm here and feeling great, and like it all happened so quickly. It was like when I found this lump, the lump was almost 3, that's how big my tumor was, so 3 centimeters. And it was in my right breast, and like we didn't, my whole family didn't know about we were like, well, we don't have anybody that has breast cancer. How did this happen? Like everybody wants to go into the past. Like we got to figure this out. And I'm just like trying to understand how this is going to fit into my life. Things in my business had just started right. I was feeling like grooving.
Yeah, you're like videos were going viral all over TikTok all the time. You were like all over my feed. I was like, get it, girl, get it.
Yeah, I mean, I had the most amount of clients that I had ever had in a given, season. Things were just things were really going well. And then it was like, hey, let's like slap this cancer on you and just see how you maneuver this little thing that we're gonna give you. And there's bits of it that when you hear that for the first time, right? Like it was almost just like I had to, it was almost just like my life was just kind of like flashing like this. And my mom was probably more distraught than I was. I was in very much shock. And then, so many calls rushing in and so many people reaching out, and my people pleaser was like on high alert. Like all of a sudden I felt like I had to like get back to everybody. I was like, wait a minute, I just found out I have cancer. Like I need to take a second here. Yeah. Like this isn't about anybody else. This is about me. So it healed that part of me in a way too, that I don't have this, there was parts of that people pleaser that was still there that needed to be healed. So isn't that funny that you get cancer and yet it healed so many other mental anguishes that were still residing in my system.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. It was nutty.
I mean, I'm just processing this because you're such a source of light and sorceress of light as well. And it's, I didn't want to bring the attention to the timeline, but it's also extraordinary, the time. I mean, it's like, I could just feel you in that time. And then you're like, there's this break, and then suddenly you were starting to make your way back and you're already making posts about it. And you just led with so much courage. And I feel like real, like bravery, like what it looks like. I mean, courage is not without fear, but just to keep taking action anyway. And it's really beautiful. And and that these other parts of your life healed as a result. I know there's people listening out there who have had some diagnoses that feel really paralyzing, whether cancer or not, or, coming out of the pandemic with some new mental stuff or physical stuff and just feeling really frustrated and down on themselves or about life. After going through what you've been through, is there any advice that you would give people who maybe haven't had the fortune of like coming out with such a positive attitude or with
Mhm.
allowing themselves to be so supported.
Support system's huge, right? Making sure that you have the right energy around you. I actually made sure that my mom and my sister-in-law were the two people that were there for me when I was actually going into surgery. I'd never had surgery before, never had major surgery, never been in a hospital before like that, like
Whoa.
being the patient. It was oof, just even like thinking back to that. I was so You have to be careful that you're not trying to be so strong that you're not allowing your feelings to come in. And I had to check in with myself many times because we have this ability as human beings to put I'm talking about other people onto me. So other people putting like their experiences. So I first of all didn't look and didn't read anybody's messages to me about what they were going through with cancer. Didn't do it. Not before my surgery. Not when I personally had never gone through a surgery before. I did never had been diagnosed with cancer before. I'd never had anything this big happen to me. So making sure that this was my experience was imperative. And I I have to say that all the work that I've done on myself is the reason why that was so important to me, because what we can do is we can mesh, and where fear is created, we operate in fear so often in general, whether we like to admit that or not. And so if I was to operate in fear, I would have listened to other people's story as opposed to listening to my own intuition, listening to the thoughts that were coming in my head from me, not from outside sources. If you even look up mastectomy on the internet, I mean, it's terrifying. Like like as a woman and as a 39-year-old woman who's young and like single at that, right? I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. Like you have to try and not let all the terrible things that no man's going to look at me the same way. I mean, the amount of things that were going through my head that I was like, you stop it. Like the
Mm.
second it would come in, I would be like, stop it. You stop it right now. Because that's not actually like, we're not those thoughts. And that's not light. Like, I know I love myself, and I know I'm beautiful, and me like losing my boobs, it does not make me not beautiful. I'm beautiful from the inside out. And so that's what I'm saying, where I was really not allowing myself to go there. If I was to look at those pictures of mastectomies, what does my mind want to do? That's what I'm going to look like. So I was very aware of the things that I was ingesting, very aware of it. Um, I will say that helped me beyond belief, because once I actually went through the surgery and I finally read people's stories, I found myself kind of going back into fear because I still hadn't found out what my treatment would be. And when I read people's stories, every single one of them is different because we're all different and we all have a unique makeup, right? And so that's why you have to be of sound mind to be able to take on and read or listen to other people's stories. It's like the reparenting process when we're going through these, like the ego deaths and the, reparenting. Sometimes when we're going through that process, we want to talk to our parents right away and be like, do you know all the things that you've done to me? And that if you're not prepared for what they might say back, then you probably shouldn't go through that part of the process yet. Like you have to be
Yeah.
prepared for it. Does that make sense? So
Oh
it's
yeah. I mean, in 12-step programs, the men's doesn't come to the ninth step because they're like, you need to like clean up your crap.
yeah,
You need to like start taking care of yourself before no, you're not allowed to talk to anyone. Don't
yeah,
try to repair anything before you repair yourself. And
yes,
then you go do it. And part of it, it's designed to say like, is there anything that I left out? in, you know, how I may have harmed you, and to sit and be with that and then turn that over, right? And just show up. So I really hear a beautiful practice of that, and what you've created is
It's all kind of the same when you think about these different processes, like just recovering from alcohol abuse, like recovering from anything. You know, again, it's personal freedom. Like you have to create this relationship with yourself. And every time I would listen, even with the treatment, I did something very different than probably, you know, some people might hear this and be like, oh, you didn't follow the doctor's call. I felt like I get a little wary of the medical system. Like I had the best doctors. What
with
they
good
did,
reason. We do not have like,
scary.
yeah, our
It's
medical system is not great.
no, and I witnessed that in a way that I was not. Maybe I don't think it wasn't. I was not prepared for, because I have seen these things, but actually physically seeing it and going like, oh, this is bad. This is real bad. And then thinking about all of the vulnerable people that go in there and they just say yes because they don't know what else to do. And I mean, I can go into that if you want. I can go into kind of like what I had found out.
Yeah,
Um,
what would you, I would love for you to speak to anything that you feel called to right now. I think
yeah,
I'm sure we're helping someone. I'm getting a lot out of
I hope so.
it.
So after I found out I didn't have cancer, oh gosh, just that alone. When she's like, basically, it didn't spread to my lymph nodes, so they took out my three of my lymphs to check, and it didn't spread. And my mom and I just bawled. I didn't even realize how much stress I was holding, waiting for that. She was just like, and it didn't spread, and I was like, like I like almost like fell out of my chair. And same with my mom. And so then it's like they're like 3 weeks later, I had an appointment with my oncologist. And in that appointment, they go over your numbers. So I go in, this guy is so nice. It's really hard to be in the oncology department. I'm not going to lie, just the energy. It's so many people are there with doing chemo, and it's just, you feel it walking in there. And I went in, guy's so nice, and he's like going over, he's like, your numbers are great, you know, like that's how he's talking, your numbers, man, your numbers. And he's like kind of talking like this. I was like, yeah, man. And I had my girlfriend was there visiting from out of town, and she was like, he's great. I was like, he is great. And he was like, you know, you're kind of high on your estrogen. And I was like, yeah, that's because that I was estrogen dominant is why I got cancer.
Mm.
And he was like, well, what are your biggest fears? And I was like, I'm going to guess like chemo. Absolutely. Hands down, chemo. Right. I still want to have a child, and I'm almost 40. Right. So these are big things for me. And he's like, yeah, he was like, I'm going to go like 80% chance you're not going to need it. And I was like, okay, cool. And then there's this other, you know, medication that they tell you about. This is when I started to reach out to the people who had been reaching out to me who have had breast cancer. What's like tamoxifen like? What do you think about that? Every single one of them. It's terrible. Oh, like I mean, the list of things that they said, I was like, okay. So then I started doing my own research, and a lot, which is where the Kangen water comes in, right? And so I started doing a ton of different research on different, more holistic ways to, you know, change my lifestyle, change the way that that I'm paying more attention to the things I consume. Pretty simple, right? We have a lot of like toxic substances in this world, and water being the number one thing that we ingest that's got a lot of toxins in it. And so I go back after they get what they call as an ONCA score. So it's your genome test mixed with your pathology report, and it gives you this score. It's about the best way I can explain it. And I go in, and
The
he's like,
score that tells you how you're doing on the scale of how they measure whether or not you have cancer,
and
or how serious it is.
how serious it is, and what are your chances of getting it
in the future.
In the future.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, what your treatment will be like and what they think that you need based off of this score.
Okay.
So I go in.
That's a lot of hypothesizing. Just hearing that, I'm like, wow, they figured that
right,
all out from one little number. Okay.
pretty
And that
much.
just like fixes everyone, huh?
And you should see, like, I wish I had the paper in front of me. You should see the paper that they get. And there's so many different numbers, and you don't know what the heck you're looking at. You're just like, yeah. And he's like, well, if you see this, and then he's got like all these stick figures of like people. If you were to like, I'm like, I don't, okay, like, gotcha. That fun-loving guy was not the fun-loving guy the second time, which I found very interesting. And I had a different girlfriend there for the second, and she's a nutritionist, and she is actually, she was a bodybuilder back in the day, but she's very like aware of the things that we put in our body. I wanted her there because I wanted to see her reaction, and she was just like, she had the same feeling about this guy. I was like, I swear he was so different last time. And I know he's giving me some news, but my score was 2 points under the recommendation. So I was actually under the score that you would tell somebody that they need chemo, and he still recommended chemo. And I was looking at him and I'm like, okay. And I didn't really have like a reaction because I already knew intuitively, I already knew based off of the other numbers that they gave me, but also I lost my boobs, for crying out loud. You already took all the cancer from me. Like, you already took a part of me. And now you're telling me that you want to put me into early menopause. So I go from a 39-year-old woman to a 55-year-old woman, essentially, physically. I lose my hair, I like my skin, everything inside of me changes. Basically, yes, I might not get cancer in the future, but listen to this. My chances without chemo is 10% out of 100. So 10 out of 100 that I would get cancer again, maybe in 10 to 20 years. If I did chemo, that long list of side effects, if I did chemo, it goes down by 2%. 2. So you want me to do all this to my body for a 2% difference of maybe of like 8% chance, I'm not even in the 40s or the 50s or like, you're definitely going to get this again. And I was just shocked. And I just sat there and I start, he's like, so when should we get you scheduled? He just said, when can we get you scheduled for this chemo? And then he's telling me that if you don't want to lose your hair, you can spend $1,500 out of pocket per cold cap therapy for each time. So $1,500 to put a cold cap on every treatment that I had to go in for chemo. And I'm like listening to him, just, okay, great. Sounds good. He asked me what, and I told him the research that I had been doing. And he didn't say anything to the research I was doing. He said, well, if you want to get another oncologist's opinion. And I looked at him and I put my hand on the table and I was like, yeah, no, it's not about the oncologist. Had you listened? I didn't say that part, but like, are you even paying attention to what I'm saying? And that's when I thought about all the souls that come into these places that maybe didn't do research, that maybe didn't have the support system that I had, that maybe didn't have done the work that I've done on myself. And that's where I got so emotional. And I was like, I was actually more emotional for other people because I had already made my decision. But I was like, oh my God, we care more about money and power in this world than we do about individual souls.
Yeah.
Holy shit. And
100%.
It was terrible.
So sad.
It was really sad. It was really
we're just seeing that everywhere right now. Like how, we're the only human race that destroys our own habitat. We're the only living creature that destroys our own habitat while we're living in it.
Right.
And our body is really part of it, is our habitat, and we eat, breathe, live, sleep like with mycelium and the earth. And so I just want to say thank you to listening to your heart and to your soul, and not to, you know, just not always saying yes. I mean, I think there's a lesson to learn, and not like there's a trust in the doctors, right? And there's that in the professionals. And then there's also like when your heart or your body is telling you something else.
Yes.
And I love, first of all, I should say, I would like to have said first, Candace, thank you so much for sharing your truth with us. Thank you so much for sharing it so vulnerably. And I will never understand what it's like to go through what you've been through, but I feel like you gave us a great window into it. And I can't imagine what the journey has been like for you, but I am just so grateful for you being able to share it and have this belief that's just whatever the like divine wisdom, whatever allowed you to be able to show up and listen to something else or someone else, and actually start to look at what we put in our body. Because I think it's so basic, and we just don't even diabetes, mostly we can reverse by being vegan or raw. And we're just so quick to put medicines in our body, like foreign things in our body, right? This isn't like, this isn't even like a vaccine, right? This is just like, oh, here, poison yourself. We're going to kill you a little bit, but hopefully it'll help you live.
Yeah, like hopefully.
And you're like, great.
Yeah.
That's why I know most people are like, well, fucking just let me die. Holy shit, this is horrible.
Seriously.
So what advice would you give to someone who's like maybe not quite as hopeful right now, but like, I mean, we got the story, the truth of like, you know, maybe not listen to just the first doctor you talked to, but what do you think the lesson is that you learn from all of this? Like, is there a takeaway for you?
Oh gosh.
I mean, I don't want to minimize it, but something that we can kind of leave, like, yeah, some takeaway for you that you might be able to pass on to someone else who is going through this or may go through this in the future.
I think that it's important to find people that maybe have a different perspective. Like if you're noticing that the people that you're surrounding yourself with, whether that's your family, whether that's your friends that all know about your cancer or whatever you're going through, maybe it's online, maybe all of your social media sites are pretty much, if you were to look at it, it's all a similar perspective. I think the first thing that you should do is get outside of that box a bit. Like really start to research, start to become more knowledgeable in different ways of looking at this. You know, cancer doesn't always have to be treated with these incredibly paralyzing chemicals that we put in our body. And I've heard some of the most incredible stories of people that have had stage 4 cancer and literally just started drinking this water and changing their diet. And they've been in remission for years now. For stage 4, I only had stage 2 for crying out loud, right? So I hear those stories. And, you know, water is supposed to flush out our body. Like that's what it's designed. We're made up of 70% or 80% water, right? And so water is supposed to, but because it's become a power industry, it's a money-making industry in this world, we have now ruined our water.
We literally drink toilet water.
Literally.
It's been like purified and chlorinized.
Yes.
And so it's like, here you go.
Yeah. You're not actually destroying what water is supposed to do. It's supposed to flush out any sort of toxin that comes into our system. That's what it's supposed to do. But because it's actually only hydrating us by 15% because of all the crap that they do, we're not getting the appropriate hydration that flushes anything out. So all that crap because we can't deny, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't put a Cheeto in my body every once in a while, or I don't do like crazy, you know, like I'm not like this, like I'm just like by the book with everything.
Love Cheetos.
I know, right? I don't know why apparently that in my mind right there. I need a Cheeto puff. So it's, you know, these things that we're what the air that we're breathing, just walking down the street, the amount of car exhaust that goes in our system, all of that can actually be flushed out with water if the water that we're drinking actually hydrates us properly. And let alone just like if you're doing, I always think 80-20 rule with anything in this world, 80% of the time, be really good, treat your vessel well. 20% of the time, again, if you eat a Cheeto or like, don't be so hard on yourself, like it's okay. And that works for me, personally, because there's so many things in this world that I'm like, I am definitely having a bite of that, or I'm definitely going to eat the whole entire thing. It's happening.
Nice. Good. You should. Absolutely.
Yes. Like we got to enjoy ourselves. But it's also a chemical. I can now tell the second I eat like that, I mean, my stomach, I'm like, I become 6 months pregnant. I was like, how'd this happen? Oh, dear Lord.
That had to be yesterday. I was like, I'm like pregnant suddenly. Like, what the hell?
Right? And you're like, what did I put in my,
yeah.
Right. And like an Eggo waffle. Yeah. I mean, we there's so much crap in
we're not listening to our bodies, and there's like they're now just realizing our guts have a nervous system and that we should listen to the guts because that also affects our brain and our mood and our hearts. And what's the if there's anything you could have done differently leading up to your diagnosis, what might you have done?
Ooh, that's a really great question. That's a good question.
Like, would you have been drinking Kangen water, for instance? We've kind of mentioned it. We haven't really talked about what that is.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But, I don't think that sometimes these things, like they do happen on your path that, at least for me, I actually found that it helped me and helped me grow in a way that in a strange way, cancer actually helped me. So sometimes that happens, but that's probably too because I didn't necessarily take the victim mindset with it, right? And when we take the victim mindset, we don't learn from that place. We don't grow from that place because now we're just like a victim to our circumstance as opposed to rising above it and going like, okay, why did this show up? What do I need to learn from this? How am I showing up in it started to make me look at everything. How am I showing up with the way that I'm treating my body? So when I look back on the way I was actually really healthy, there's a lot of things that I was doing that I worked out all the time. I ate well for the most part, 80-20, I lived I definitely smoked cigarettes back in the day. So there's things like that. Like, sure, I wish I would never have had that first cigarette, but there's things that I can't go back and change time either. And so I think the water is a huge one that, had I, had been drinking that and things like that would have definitely changed. But I don't know. I think personally, I wish I would have, once I found that lump, I didn't necessarily jump on it really, really quickly. I had things come into I was like, I kept showing people and they'd be like, please tell me you have an appointment. I was like, yeah. I almost treated it like getting on, like those calls with the automated and you're like, I don't have time for this. And you keep putting it off. You know what I mean? And you're like,
oh, yes,
I can do this, but I don't want to sit on that automation for, an hour. And so you just it's that one thing that you just keep.
I did that today. Yep.
I hate it. And I'm like the worst procrastinator when it comes to stuff like that. So it showed me that my procrastination doesn't necessarily serve me.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Fancy that.
My self-sabotaging behavior. Yeah. So if anything, it showed me that it's not in my best interest. But at the same time, too, if I would have waited even longer, this thing could have, it was big. It was huge. So it could have spread to my lymph. That was even in the time I was waiting about a month for my surgery. I was that's what I was nervous
You're
about.
like,
Like,
I have to wait a month?
yeah, like I'm like,
How
do
do we
you
know it's
know
not going to spread between now and then? Like,
that
there's nothing sooner?
seriously? And that was like the quickest they could get me in. Uh,
Oh my God. And
and
think
so
about and you probably are in I mean, a place of privilege over other people trying to get in surgeries too, right? Like there's
could be,
people
yeah,
coming in off the streets with cancer that may have like, might not be able to get a spot for like 6 months on a surgery list or don't have insurance
right.
or, you know, um, yeah.
Actually, my
So,
insurance changed, right? But like that was the other like act of God right there was I was on this insurance that I didn't, it was when I was at my old place of work, didn't really know how it worked. It was like the odd Cobra plan after I lost my job during COVID. And I kept, it was the thing that I needed to call about, and I kept putting it off. And I was like, I got to change. I kept saying to myself, I got to change this. This was before I even really knew about the lump. I was like, I've got to change this insurance. And one day I just did. And so that's what took me a while just to get a new appointment, because it took about a month for me to even get my next insurance to come through. But thank God that I did,
oof.
because that this insurance covered my a lot more than it would have, even though I've had to pay. I mean, this has been the most pricey thing ever, ever.
Mm,
So that's a down,
mm,
yeah, that's the downside to it. Is there
mm.
just even my surgery going in, they were like, okay, so your copay is 2,500. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. What kind of copay is this? It's just, it's been real. It's been real fun.
Yeah. Yes. Well, you have been a trooper. It's really, just the fact. I was even like hesitant to ask you. I was like, too soon? Well, she could say no. Like, I trust Candace. Like, she'll be real with me. But you're also like, I saw you like your light shine right again, and I was like, man, I just, and I know what it's like even well, I haven't had cancer, but going through some major trauma or grief, and like when you said, people were getting back to you and then you suddenly felt like you had to get back to them, and like
Mhm.
remember people getting mad at me if I didn't get back at a certain time, or feeling like I couldn't grieve because I had to like show up for them. And just your lesson of, what I'm really taking away from this is how you've allowed yourself to be supported.
Yes. Ooh, receiving the love was a big one. That was a
And I
big,
wonder if that's ever been a challenge for you.
yes, my entire life. So that's a thank you for actually bringing that up, because that, my mom and I were talking about that. I'd never had to, I was consistently, I mean, you almost don't even realize how many people that you've met in your life until something like this happens to you. I had people, some of my favorite women that I've met on my journey, that I became friends with when I lived in Boulder, Colorado. These women did so much for me, and were just like, Candace, oh my God, we love you so. And I mean, they were sending me care packages. I hadn't seen them in years, like I think I filmed one of their weddings, a few of them. And then I really like kind of like we just stopped contact. So it brought these people back in my life, and the receiving of all of this stuff, like, you have something like cancer, you're like, sometimes you can have the mindset of like, I don't deserve this. I didn't ever feel like that, because I had to keep myself in that gratitude. Just so grateful that my life has taken me into this many different places, that I met this many different beautiful humans that showed up for me in a way that was so beautiful. I had to kind of be in such a receiving mode like I'd never have before. And it felt actually really beautiful and good. If this was me 5, 10 years ago, I would have been that like, oh no, 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 please stop. Just stop.
Mm,
Right.
mm,
So again, that goes to show, when you do the work on yourself, when you really dive into this work and you start to see yourself different, you can be at the capacity of receiving that love.
yeah.
Right. Which
Yeah.
is
And you're
important.
such a lover. And
Yes.
so I am wondering, for those people who have a hard time reaching out, who are great at showing up for other people, but not necessarily receiving themselves, what advice would you give them?
It's a good question. Yeah, that's a good thing to ask. You know, the way in which to, like, when you feel, usually that's, what do you think that you don't deserve? It goes back to our internal belief system that are those ways that we've operated in lack and fear in our past, and how we've created these belief systems over time. Like, I don't deserve this because maybe your dad used to yell at you and say certain things to you that you took on as a belief about yourself, that I don't deserve this because this is how I was treated. And that, when you kind of can map that out, and you can sit with yourself and start to go, why is it that I don't deserve this? Why do I think like that? And start to then map out, like, what do I love about myself? When you can start to look at the things that you actually do love about yourself, you're way more apt to be able to receive the love, right? Yeah, I would say that's kind of, but you got to map that out, right? You have to, it's so important to write those types of things down, or just meditate on it. Sit, go on a long walk. Those are, not everybody's a writer. Not everybody likes to grab a pen and paper and do that kind of stuff, or their ego gets in the way. They're like, "This is stupid." But it's so important. It really is so important, because your confidence builds from that place in a big way. In a big way.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that. I just want to second that. I believe I had a mentor, a coach once say, I want you to write down, I was really struggling at this time. And he said, I want you to write down 5 things every day before you go to bed that you're grateful for, and 5 esteemable acts you did that day. Extra credit if no one else saw you do it or you didn't tell someone. Right. And just little things like, oh, yeah, I guess I did open the door for that person, or I
Yes.
cleaned up after them, or like I actually like made my bed and took a shower and got to a meeting on time, or like I
Yeah.
actually did exercise today, and or just little things. They could be tiny, but and I remember giving that to another client. He was like, this really tough dude and like finance guy, and he's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like that's your fucking thing?" And I'm like, "Have you ever tried it?" And because it was just his defense mechanism,
Totally.
right? Had
Yes.
no idea how to actually start nurturing a relationship with himself. That sounds totally like not cool or fun, right? So,
Yes.
um, are there any, and it's not always cool or fun, but I think part of what we're dealing with, our lack of wellness in society, is not giving ourselves permission to have fun, to be
Oh,
playful, to be curious, and I always, you
huge.
help me remember to take myself less seriously too. Like I love, it's been no surprise that you've had so much success on social media, because you just like have so much fun. And I believe you really embrace your inner child too, and that's probably allowed you to be supported and get through this, because you have so much life, and I see you nurture that in yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate being seen in that. Thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
when you were talking about this, I will say, the things that can kind of work against you, right? In your attempt to kind of relate to people in your environment, and actually activate that belief, those negative belief systems that we create in ourselves. The things that activate those self-sabotaging behaviors the most is procrastination, like chaotic prioritization, not being fully committed to something, unrealistic expectations, distractions, FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. All of those will actually activate your those self-sabotaging patterns. So the more that you stay in those energies, right, you'll be less able to actually receive love or receive anything for yourself, because you're activating those old belief systems constantly.
That is some dose of realness right there, some truth. So for
So,
anyone with like, yeah, that's great, I'm definitely activating. Like, what have you found have been some ways in your life to actually, like, what work has actually made a difference for you in reparenting or soothing those systems that haven't worked for you, or reprogramming? Is there anything you've done in your life that's, I mean, you mentioned the writing and walking and sharing. Is there
Yeah,
anything specific that's really
there's
helped you?
different like reparenting processes that I do with even my clients, but actually childlike play is one of them. I think that's one of
Mm,
the most important things that when we are too serious all the time, even the things that like we make fun
sorry.
of or like we like I anytime I was like with boyfriends or things like that, my dad was like this too. He would get so upset if like you made fun of something that he did, and then as he got older, that part of him started to disintegrate. And
Mm.
so it was just like so many times I'd be like, why are you like, what? That's funny. Just come on. Like, that's kind of how I've always been. Like, laugh at yourself. Like, we're so imperfect, like there's when you're trying to be something that you're not, like you're like, what level, I say this to my clients, what level are you putting for your, like, where is this invisible place that you think that you have to be? And one of my clients, Robin, she was like, I don't know. I just, I actually don't know. Like, what am I trying to, I'm like, you somewhere in your past, and it's usually a parent figure, right? That said you had to be something, that now you have this invisible level that you think you always have to reach. So almost like that childlike play goes away, where you can't laugh at anything, you can't even laugh at yourself, you're looking at yourself so critically, you're just like, oh my god, like, how did I show it, why did I say that, what did it, like that. Think about just the, like, me
It's
even saying that,
exhausting.
it's
Yeah.
exhausting,
Yeah.
like we're so imperfect, and the more we can remember that, right?
Yeah.
And then emotional regulation is another that kind of
Mm.
goes, emotionally regulating yourself, and that takes understanding your ego a little bit, like why is your ego taking the front seat, and your emotions. If I will say, one of my favorite, and I actually put this a part of my program to that I love people to watch, it's emotions. If you go like on YouTube, I think it's on the Gaia channel. Oh my gosh, what, Joe Dispenza's in it.
Hmm.
But it literally is like motions. God,
Okay.
it's just amazing. I watch it all the time as just a reminder how much our emotions control us, and how we can actually, if we start to regulate them, it completely changes your nervous system, and you're not so, again, controlled by what other people are doing, and you have more control over your environment. You're not looking at things from this, when our emotions control us, we don't have, um,
Yeah.
we can't
You're
see
not
the
in control of shit. Might as well just let go of the driver wheel because it's driving itself anyway.
no, like, come on,
Yeah.
you got, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, something like having like cancer can really throw you into that place of, at least for me, where it's like I was already working on this, but something like that. So it's almost like, don't wait until you have something like that happen to you, like what happened to me, for you to start
Mm.
doing the work on yourself, because that
Mm.
is, it's incredibly, I don't want that for people. I want them
Yeah.
to learn how to do this before, something.
Emotional regulation is such a great thing. And, I was talking about the gut earlier. It's just been on my mind. I got to teach this really cool presentation to a corporation that's global, and it was called Food and Mood. And people were like, just their mood was blown that what you put in your body could affect your mood. That your gut has its own nervous system, and that it communicates with your brain, and that it's not just like there's emotional regulation, and part of that could literally be what you're eating.
Mhm.
um, I've learned, yeah, I also have some things that I love around the 80-20 rule. And occasionally, if I enjoy too much of those at night, aka ice cream or something,
Oh my
I
gosh.
tend to wake up feeling horrible, a little depressed, bloated, hungover
Yeah.
almost. And what was my point with that? Oh yeah, emotional regulation. Right. So,
Like
and
us.
then there's times like, I mean, this is a more extreme. Hopefully one day it's not extreme, but I was eating raw for a month and it was only vegetarian and raw. And I got so high from the food. I felt amazing. I had crazy, incredible energy. I was digesting so quickly, like I almost couldn't, felt like I couldn't keep up with my metabolism. And I realized, oh, it's just that I'm not like overfilling myself all the time. I'm eating healthier things so my body actually knows what to do with it. It goes somewhere. It doesn't just sit there and hurt, right? And there's so much, we're so quick to throw medicine on top of things or, here, take this, when we can actually tune into our body. So I really hear that you've done the work to tune into your body and listen, and that you don't have to wait to have cancer to do that work.
No, we do not. Don't do
That's
that.
a good takeaway today. Do you have a couple more minutes?
For to do the work. Boom. We'll leave it there.
Yeah. Do you have a couple more minutes for me to ask you a few more questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Awesome. So, what is this is questions I ask all the guests here at the end, but what is your self-care routine today?
Oh.
Well, do you have one? It's okay if you don't.
Nope, just wing it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what does it look like? Could you share some of that with us?
Yeah, just kind of like how my like a given day kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially around like your self-care, like how do you put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you show up for all these other people? Because you're still coaching and you have a lot of other stuff you're dealing with.
Yes. Well, I don't think like when I am an introverted person. So I'm a person that does need to recharge. Because when I give people my energy, I give them 100% of it. So like after I'm done with you, I will do something like I'll probably meditate. I'll go on a long walk, those types of things, because now I'm with myself. I put on a podcast. I'll do something that literally, if I was like, which we kind of are, like an energetic battery, it was like plugging myself in. Going on the walk is like plugging myself in, and all of a sudden I'm like, here comes my batteries back. And now I can actually give again from that space. Those are big self-care things for me. Same with, I usually only like go see people. I give myself only like 2 or 3 times a week. Do I go out and like, I'm actually like with people like friends and stuff like that. If I do too many back-to-back things, I notice that really drains me. And that's just me, right? Some people actually get charged by other people, right? I do and I don't. I think it's because of the energy that I give. I actually get more drained, and that's not a negative draining. It's not like I like leave, like I'm like, oh, why did I say yes to that? No, it's just that I'm tired. I'm tired of conversation. I'm tired of like giving myself in that way. And so I definitely do those types of things to recharge that. But as far as like physically, I always wake up and I wake up at 5:30 because I coach a girl. It's still one more personal training client that I have from back in the day, which it's more life coaching at this point than personal training, but it is what it is. Yeah. But I always drink this green, like I drink my vitamin drink. And so it's like a superfood. It's like a mix of, and I always like putting water as like the first thing in my body, and lukewarm water. So that like soothes my stomach, as opposed to putting something so acidic like coffee right away into my system. I do that. I take my vitamins because there's collagen that I put in there, so I can actually take vitamins with it. So there's some calories. Sometimes vitamins make people nauseous. And I actually meditate every single day. I have like I was like, you don't even know if you can see it. It's like down there. There's like a little altar.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah.
So, meditation is everything to me. It's And I think some people have a skewed idea of what meditation is, like we got to clear our mind. And it's more just allowing. I'll sometimes journal right after, sometimes, not every time, of the things that came up. Because sometimes there's a lot of prophecy and we're actually all very prophetic if you actually tap into that. So there's a lot of prophecy in the things that you think of, and you'll see if you start writing them down, certain things play out and you're like, oh my God, I wrote this. But that takes practice to kind of tap into that. That's a huge one for me. And then middle of the day is like, it's clients and things like that. And then nighttime, I'm very like, I shut down at around 6. I'm not a person that this is another self-care. Some people think that I'll be so busy during the day. I'm very strategic about the things that I say to people. I might say that I'm busy and I'll just be sitting there. That's a boundary, because you can't let people just have access to you all the time. If you say like, yeah, I have time, or no, I'm just sitting here, like you just say that you're sitting there, that you've just given somebody a chance to like, because now, right now they're like, if they ask you for something, you just said you were sitting there. You can't say no now, like you look like an asshole. So
This is great advice. So you have some healthy boundaries.
Yeah, be strategic about the things that you're telling people. You're not lying, like
you're not available.
You're just not available. So don't say that you're like I just have a quiet day. People will try to take your energy any way they can, and that's not necessarily bad or intentional as being negative. It's just that we're designed like that. Like, I need you, so if you can give me this, I'm going to try and get it any way I can. So that's self-care to me. Those types of things are incredibly important, is your boundaries that you place on your life and with people.
That is awesome. I can't stress that enough. And you mentioned you wind down at night. What does that look like? Do you watch TV? Do you stay off?
Shows. I actually get a lot of downloads from shows. There's things that you can see in shows that you're like, oh yeah, wow, didn't think about it like that. Yeah. If you're coming at it from that, right? If you're not just completely shutting yourself down.
Yeah.
I love some of it. I'm not the person that necessarily is like, TV's bad for you. I think there's a lot that you can derive from TV. You just got to be careful. And then I do love to read. So sometimes I'll sit on my patio when mosquitoes aren't trying to attack my body.
Do you have mosquitoes out there?
I got like my foot. I looked like I had like elephantitis of the foot. It was extreme. I posted it on my story. My entire, like 2 bites and my entire foot, like literally just huge. And I was like, oh my God, I think I'm allergic to mosquitoes. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so, great. Add it to the charts. Add it to your score.
Add it to my Anka score. Yeah. But I love to read. I always like make tea, like sleepy time tea. It's like I almost do that every single night just to like wind my body down.
Are there any books you're reading right now or that you've read recently that you've really loved?
Actually, yes, there's quite a few. Right now I'm actually reading, it's such like a coach thing to read, but it's called like stress, anxiety, and depression. And I'm just reading up on, there's this, so did anybody, there's this new show out about,
hey, y'all, anybody see that show?
I know.
I mean, there's some people watching. We can ask.
It was about the girl. There was a girl, I don't even remember the place that she lived. Anyways, she essentially killed her boyfriend was about to commit suicide, and she almost helped him through texting. And it was all over the news. Anyways, they actually made like a show out of that storyline. But the doctor was who I was intrigued with, who actually was on her side because of the toxicity of the the drugs that are in our, hold on, I just got to find it real quick. Yes. His name is, Toxic Psychiatry. But he has another one that I'm reading, and his name is Dr. Peter Breggin. And his analysis of her on the stand, if you actually watch the documentary of what happened to this girl, was actually quite brilliant. And she had almost both of these two individuals, these young kids, and they're 16, 17, had such a crazy combination of different psychiatric drugs in their systems that were technically supposed to be helping them with depression and suicidal thoughts. And his opinion and his theory is it's these drugs that were actually the combinations of these drugs that were actually making them react to their environment in the way that they were. And like the things that she was doing and all of this. So I bought a few of his books because I was so intrigued by his, like what he was saying, even though from like a bird's eye view, you look at what he was saying. And if you didn't like this girl for doing what she did, then you'd miss the things that he was saying because you're emotionally attached to the fact that she did this, which what she did was terrible. So I get it. But I wasn't necessarily attached to that. I was more focused on how terrible some of these drugs and what they can do to us. So I'm excited.
Yeah, that's wild. Oh, that sounds like a fun, intriguing story from someone who likes that kind of psychology. I love it. I was studying like abnormal psychology and criminal psychology. And I was like, I want to know about the most unwell people. It's just fascinating to me because we're all humans, and we still like I have a lot of friends who are bipolar. I feel like half the country's been diagnosed bipolar now, but who've been bipolar 1 have major what people would diagnose as delusions. But sometimes I'm like I'm hearing them and I'm like, I feel like you're tapped into something more than we may not even like. Who are we to say that you're that's unwell? And I had a teacher, thank God, in high school once when I had taken Ritalin shortly, but it didn't really help me. And he was like, well, I think everyone in the world should take medicine to be like us ADHD people. We don't need to take medicine to be like them. We're the most creative, fun people out there. And I was like, that's great.
I actually think your ADHD is a superpower. I actually stopped taking Adderall because I was like, why am I taking this? And I felt 10 times better after not taking it. And I had gotten down to like a 10 milligram, so I wasn't taking too much of it. But sometimes like we tell people that some of these things are bad and they actually can be utilized, right? It's just that society tells us so much and we listen. And so we think, we're people that don't like to do wrong or do things bad, but sometimes like we don't question the people that we're getting the information from, right?
True.
We don't do that enough. True. And unfortunately, it's why we are here and why everything is so crazy.
That's why we're on this podcast today. Yeah, I mean, I will also say like some pharmaceutical medication has saved my life and helped me get well enough to where I could get the help I needed and where I could really like function and not take my own life and actually start to, so I want to say that.
Yes, it's not, I'm not like I hate Western medicine. Thank you for even saying that, because that's not at all what I'm saying. But I do think that sometimes we diagnose or we give people too much.
Yeah.
And then they don't know necessarily what to do with all of that. Yeah. And sometimes it's just merely doing some different work that can help us, right?
And give us some tools. I mean, medication can help balance you, but you still have to live in the world with your brain and everything else. And so, I'm just grateful for you sharing that. Okay, 2 more quick questions.
Gotcha.
Before we go. 1, if your life was a Hollywood movie, what would be the title of it?
A Little Bit of Sunshine.
Oh, I love that.
I feel like
go see that movie.
I'd go see that movie. Yeah. I feel like, my mom always said that about. So when you say that you have light, she always you know, she always said things like, don't let anybody dull your sparkle, because your sparkle is what makes you you. She's like, you are a light in this world. And I've heard that since I was a kid.
No pressure.
Yeah, trust me, that actually brought so much pressure to me at times, where
Yeah.
it actually put me into some traumatic type states of mind, that like I had to be something that I didn't know, you know. That's what I learned a lot of, had to let go of in the leap, and things like some of the stuff that you and I did together, some of those programs, because it was my struggle getting on social media. There was that perfectionism, like, well, I have to be this light, you know,
Yes.
for everybody else. But yeah, I do feel like it is important, though. We all are light, you know, and the more we can remember that and spread that and get back to that and not be so stuck in our trauma, we can then, you know, turn other people's lights on. So spread a little bit of sunshine. I like that title.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then if you could cast any major Hollywood actor, who would you cast as your parents?
Oh gosh, that's a Helen Mirren as my mom for sure. Mainly because she kind of looks like her, and I like Helen Mirren. Or
She's
Meryl
amazing.
Streep. God, no, I love Meryl Streep. I
You
love.
get to cast anyone you want.
I know.
So.
It would be those two.
Okay. They could audition.
Yeah,
They could compete for the part.
totally. And I would say like a Chevy Chase for my dad would like be super. That would be hilarious. Those actors together. But
I would love to see them together.
totally.
Wow, that's amazing.
I do like. I've always loved him. I love his like goofiness, but he also can be very. You know, my dad's kind of like that.
Yeah.
And my
I
dad
actually got to meet him on an airplane recently. I sat next to him flying to do my Dell commercial. I couldn't tell anyone because I wasn't allowed to talk about Dell, you know, when I did it recently. But I was flying there to do it, and I like looked next to me, and like the guy like snoring, drooling on himself. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like trying to get closer to look, but it's really awkward. We're in like first class and there's no one else around. But I realized like at moment, like I just saw that he was tired and that he's like, he looked like he had been through hell. And I just decided to leave him alone. Even though it just made me so happy. I was like, one of my idols is right next to me. But I saw my father in him as my father's gotten older, and his daughter walked up and was trying to help him out, and he was kind of out of it. And then I went on social media, and he had like been out all night at this comedy club, and I was like, poor guy, he just needs to go home and take a nap. It was such a wild, interesting experience. I don't think I've actually told anyone. I may have like texted a friend like an over the shoulder, like that
check it out.
that hair and cap dude and that little spec.
That guy.
Yeah.
That's him. That's so funny that I picked that guy and that, or picked him.
I love
We
that.
actually ended up having that story.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to ask you is if you could give one gift to the world today, what would it be?
Oh gosh, like one gift to the world. I would say, oh God, I want to give the world inner peace, inner peace, not outward peace, inner, because that would end up shining. I would, yeah, almost take away, I would want to help take away and give the gift of inner peace, to take away the heaviness of past experiences that weigh us down, you know, like the ability to like let go of our past, so it's not holding on to us so strongly, so we can actually live in the now. That would be amazing. I feel like our past is what just grips us, and then we're like, no, and we're like trying to move forward. We're like, no. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, unmute. Oh, yeah. I said, I'm sorry. Were you saying something else thinking about my past? I just had to mute myself through that. Yeah, thank you, Candace. That's what a beautiful gift. Well, you've been a gift to me today. I hope anyone listening, I hope this has been somewhat of a gift for you. And please share this with someone who could use it today. You know, the algorithms really, they make more money if we hate on each other. So spreading this, commenting really helps actually get medicine of healing out there. And Candace, thank you so much for sharing your story and for being so generous with your time and just trusting us to share this beautiful space. It's
Thank you
really
so much
special.
for having me. I honestly,
Yeah.
this was such a pleasure. I love talking to. I could talk to you forever.
We really could.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to be continued. And
Absolutely.
for anyone who wants to get hold of you, what's the best place for them to reach you?
I would say my Instagram.
Okay,
It's
cool.
Candace_evolving you.
Got it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then this will be an episode, or is if you're listening in the future, on our podcast. So we'll be sure to let you know when all that comes out, promote it across the interwebs. And again, thank you everyone for listening, for being on this journey with us. We're all in it together. This really is for you. So thank you for being here. And Candace, I'm so grateful for you. I have so much love for you.
So much.
I
Yeah.
hold you in my heart, and yeah, it's just been really wonderful.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for everybody listening.
Yeah, I look forward to connecting more.
Absolutely.
Take care, dudes. Till next time.